because I was one of those people, maybe you haven't, but I was one of those people that wasn't really born with a family that taught about financial literacy, or had the typical family that supported you, like paid for all your schooling, like give you your first car, like typical stuff, like saving for, down payment on a house, like stuff like that. And I would say unfortunately, but there's some fortunate where I had to learn how to survive and work hard. So I want to tell my journey with that, especially financially, because I struggled a lot when it came to financial abundance because it was just so hard. And it all really started when unfortunately, like I was told by my mom that I had to get out of the place that I was at, that we because she was moving and the wanted to leave me there. And I think that was the beginning of me of things getting real, where I was like, oh my god, this part-time job that I had at H&M wasn't enough. Go back a bit. I struggled much with that part-time job. It was in retail. It was H&M, and I remember we went through summers, and I don't know if you worked in retail that where January would just be so slow after Christmas. So that usually meant a low paycheck, and I hated that. Because you would go from, let's say, like $500 in a paycheck to getting like, $100, $200, and it's like obviously that wasn't enough to survive. And I remember struggling so much, and that caused me to get behind bills and like go into a small amount of debt. At the time, it wasn't a lot. And I remember there was one summer specifically where two girls that worked there asked one of the managers, a lot of favoritism, asked one of the managers to get 40 hours, and she was basically giving literally two people on that schedule 40 hours. And I remember it hurt so much because everyone else was getting 1 to 2 shifts, and it sucked. And I wish, when I think back, I wish I had the voice to speak up and say, okay, why are they getting 40 hours the whole summer and everyone was struggling? And it really made an imprint on me because I'm like, that was a summer that I really struggled. And I wish I kind of did more, but it's like when you're in that space, it's like you don't know what you can do, right? All you can do is stress and be like, okay, I hope it gets better, all that stuff. And so what ended up happening is I finally applied to another job, and this was at a dealership. And I remember being so happy to get out there because it was full time and I didn't have to struggle again in terms of, oh, like when the January happens, it slows down. And at the time I was taking the bus, and we all know, I don't know if you've taken a bus, but it is something else, right? It humbles you real quick. And I remember there was this one time where one of the finance managers in the dealership came up to me, and they were like, "Hey, like we had the cars in, and the car is still good." And they offered it for about like $2,000. Um, and I remember I was sitting at the work desk, and I was like scrunching numbers, and I was like, "How can I do this?" And obviously, I couldn't make it happen. And I remember it was at that moment where I was like, "Oh my god, how am I working 40 hours?" Okay. How am I working 40 hours a week, right? And this was years ago. And I'm like, I can't even afford a car. Like, this was just crazy to me. And it's like, I had no savings at the time because I was trying to like catch up on bills and, all those good stuff. Oh, give me a second. Um, and so, and I remember at that time, like, I remember going home and I told her, hey, I can't do it. Even though the car was such a great price, I couldn't crunch those numbers. I wasn't making enough. And so that's when I went on that journey of trying to figure out how else I can make money. So I was looking at blogging. I would be work researching like different like side hustles, like really trying to get started. I started even going on calls with potential coaches, being like, okay, like I need help, like someone to help me. But at the time, like the finances just weren't there. So I just kept on researching and researching. And it wasn't until I got laid off. So I got laid off from the job because I had this feeling, right? And I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna get laid off. And so I had this feeling. And I remember like literally, I got laid off. And I remember I felt so deflated. I remember they sent me in a taxi and I was so down and I was like, oh, like how could this happen? And I remember I just cried in the car because I was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to pay bills? Like, we're back at square one. Like, I felt like I had a lot of times where I went back to square one when it came to when it came financially, especially when I was starting to like get back up, and then I would go back down when it came financially. So I went through a journey when it came to when it came financially in terms of mindset. Um, and so I remember I was talking to a friend from church, and I was like, "Oh, I lost a job, and it's like I don't know what to do." And I remember she said this one thing where she was like, "Nikia, it's time to spread your wings. It's time to fly." And I don't know what happened, but instantly, that all that depression, all that sadness, like it went away. Like instantly, it just kind of shifted. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start going to the library the next day. So I started reading a lot of books and just started to be open. And long and behold, there was this opportunity by a coach. It was an Amazon coach, and this is when the drop shipping days. And I saw him helping a lot of students. I would talk to them, and I remember I had to make a decision at that moment when I was going to sign up because I was like, should I believe in myself and do it, and then use my last? I think I had a little bit of savings at that point, or from the severance and all that, or I was like, should I just continue to look for another job and suffer through it? And I feel like I weighed those out and I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the plunge. Like, what do I have to lose? And I remember I dropped the money for the Amazon coaching to do drop shipping. And I feel like that was like my journey to like experiencing financial abundance and experiencing a new world. Because through that I learned to like basically I made my first dollar online within a week of starting, and that was when I was able to pay off all my debts, like all my school loans, all that stuff. Yeah, I made that much money. Then I started coaching, and but the one thing I did though was I would always keep my money in checkings. Like I never, even if I had savings, it was like very safe, kept it in savings. And so the thing that if I were to go back in time, I would have learned more financial literacy, but I didn't know that was a thing. I think at that time I was just learning to just survive. And then so what happened is I ended up getting sick. It was like back in 2019. And then something happened with my store. And then I did have a lot of savings by then from the business. And so I was able to take off about a year. And then I think it took me about 2 to 3 years to find something else. So I did have jobs in between here and there, like, blah, blah. Um, but then, so I had jobs in between. But then I finally applied again. I saw this one position. And hey, everyone, I saw this one position and I was like, it was basically a customer success. It was online from a marketing agency. It's paying really well. And then um, I got the job actually. I ended up connecting with the owner. I just felt I was going to get it. Like sometimes I would look at a job and then feel like I was going to get it. And so by then I was behind again, basically. Right. And the thing is, when I got the job, I was catching up on my bills. But I think I got so caught up with, I was like, I just want my own thing. Like, I don't want to work a job because I already had owned a business. And I got so caught up with it to the point where he let me go. But I remember when he let me go, something just shifted. And I was like, I see that you're making like 80 grand, 100K per month. I want that. I want to learn that. I'm like, can you be my mentor and show me? So he agreed. So I went on that journey, starting that like marketing agency, like did like in my first 6 weeks, did like 10K, right? And it really showed me, it really taught me that like if you just do a small thing, like so in this case, he was telling me, okay, go out to talk to people and do like an informational interview. Um, and we could talk about more detail about that one day, but he basically told me to do that, go outside my comfort zone. And I realized that like if you have a small skill, and let's say if you're struggling and you really need money, you could do something like that and talk to people and then create an offer. And then that's how you can make your first few, thousands, like basically getting clients. I don't think I am. Definitely not. I'm very good at disconnecting the world because I really grew up very underprivileged, right? Especially being almost homeless and all that stuff. Um, but I would say that I have gotten a lot of opportunities, right? I would say I've gotten a lot of opportunities just connecting with people and being myself. Anyway, so back to the story. So basically, I was doing this business, and then one day, I started doing like YouTube videos and all that stuff, and everything changed from there. Like everything just changed. And I started to pivot. And then so I went back to struggling again with that same mindset, right? So it was always like I'll go to down to zero and then shoot back up, use my skills and shoot back up, and then make more money and then go back down to zero. Like I was going through that spiral of going from poverty mindset to abundance, and then like always going back. Because the thing is, you can't outrun a a poverty mindset. You cannot run it. Like if you are not working on your mindset when it comes to finances, um, even when you do certain things, like even when you do like a certain skill or you work very hard for something, it's always going to hold you back until you work on your mindset. So what I did differently, I got another job again because I wanted to switch gears. And one day I was like, okay, I want to do this differently. Yeah, like yes, I used to save all that stuff. So let me tell you. So in between there, what really opened my eyes is at my church, my pastor did a whole seminar. She did this whole seminar where she talked about like how to invest your money, how she did it, and she would talk about like different like trades that you would do, like how she does it for like individual trades, where you do all the research and then going through the and then like basically learning about different trades that's out there and all that stuff and like how to invest and all that. And that really like blew my mind because I was like, why didn't I know this years ago? And so basically when I went into this new job, this time I went through a different mindset where I was like, okay, I don't want to. It came to a year where I was like, I no longer want to go to zero every time. Basically, I don't want to go to zero every time the year ends. And I was like, this year is going to be different. So here's what I did different that really helped me because for a person who wasn't privileged, I'm really struggled with money, like had to learn it on my own, like all that stuff, like how to get out that poverty mindset. I wanted to share the things that shifted for me. So one day when I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, how can I fight this out? So usually I like reading books about self-development. And I was like, why not read books about finances? So basically, if like I realized I'm like, if my biggest weakness right now when is like money, meaning that like I always go back to zero and then have to build back up in the next year, right? I was like, I have to do something different. So then I started looking into like finance books. So one of the first finance books I read was The Automatic Millionaire. And that book by things by David Bach. And that book really opened my eyes. It was such a game changer because he told one of the stories where when he was doing a seminar, he was speaking to this couple where they seemed average, regular, like very simple people. And he talked about how they only made like 50K a year or something like that, each or something like that. And then he was like, oh, they mentioned that they were a millionaire. And I remember my face dropped and I was like, what? Because up until then, I always thought that you had to make like a ton of money in order to be a millionaire, which is technically true, right? Like if you want to like, make a lot of money more than your job, usually you'd have a business. And then what do you call it? What do you call it? And how do I say this? Okay. And that's what I always thought. It was like you just have to make money. It wasn't possible to like create a very cushy like um finance portfolio into whether that was savings, saving your TFSA, or a high interest account, saving in investments and all that stuff. And they talked he basically asked them in the story, he was like, how did you do it? And they talked about how, like, they just kept on saving, and they maxed out their like 401k, stuff like that, for them to become millionaires by the time they're ready to retire. I'd basically making $50,000 each. And I was like, what? Like, that really like expanded my mind. And I feel like that was a journey that got me on my financial literacy journey, and doing it in a different way than I did in years. And so one of the things he talked about was paying yourself first. Because a lot of us don't, right? Usually when people get their paychecks right away, they're like paying all the bills, and then they don't pay themselves first. So that was my first journey of actually building up a savings. So I'm not talking about like when I was in my business, you know, and like, because that's different. Like, you'll get big chunks of cash. Yes, but I would always keep it in my like account. Like, I wouldn't like rearrange it, nothing like that. And he talked about how you'd pay yourself first. So you would automatically take a amount out, and then you start saving that. And then whatever you have rest, like, he doesn't believe in budgeting. You can budget if you want, whatever works. But he believes that once you pay yourself first, you don't have to what do you call it? Once you pay yourself first, you don't have to then worry and be like, oh my god, am I gonna have anything left over by the time I pay all the bills? Because usually that's what people do, is they pay all the bills and then whatever's left over. But now you're paying yourself first, right? And so he did give a grid on like how much you should be paying. Like, basically, you want to work yourself up to eventually like paying yourself like 30% or whatever. I think right now I'm at like 3 to 5% right now. I'm slowly increasing. So I started very low. When I first heard that, I was at like a 1% of savings, where I was only doing $25, and then I started to increase it over time. And I remember the one time it was the biggest game changer was when I went away to a conference, and I think I didn't, eventually I was like, I need to go in my savings. And I think my savings was so small. It was like $300. Okay. And compared to what I was used to, I was like $300. And I remember taking out $100. And I remember that's when everything made sense. And I was like, so this is what savings is about, like this small savings. And if I didn't have that otherwise, because in my mind, like, saving small to me didn't really make sense. I was just trying it out because he said like that's where you start. But it clicked. Like, once I had to use it and take that $100 out, I was like, oh shoot. Cause look how that saved me, even though it was small. See, some of you guys have to start small. Like, a lot of people think like, oh, I have to like be saving $1,000 a month. No. You be saving $5, $25 a month, and that's all you need. And so once I saw that happen, that's when I basically, once I saw that happen, that's when I started to um save even more. And it started to get addictive because I was like, okay, so if I could continue to save, it will just grow and grow and grow. And it does something to you when you start saving. There's something about it. Once you see your savings start growing, it gives you this peace of mindset, like a peace of mind that, like, it's like you can't explain it. It's like being able to know that, okay, if anything were to happen, I know the money's there. Like, if anything would happen, I could always dip in. Like, I'm not going to negatives and not a zero. It's just so powerful. And now I've went on to having sinking funds. Like, now I have actually like a business fund. Eventually I want to do a soft girl fund, but I have a business fund. I have like a car maintenance fund. Like, I have like a car fund, like sinking fund. So I've really expanded, but and then every time I have something that's like left over from my paycheck, I would like automatically put it in savings. Um, so that was one of the things, or two of the things. And I want to say this is that, look, if you're working, look into your job and see if they deposit funds into a separate account other than your main account. Because that's what I do in my job. A lot of people don't seem to know that, but that's what I do at my job. In my job, you could do up to 3 accounts. And so what I do is I tell them, hey, like, add this a certain amount into another account. So basically, when the deposit hits, like, I don't even realize it's gone because it's already in another account. And so you have that peace of mind where you're like, okay, I'm paying myself first. Another thing I did is I started So another book I read was You're a Badass at Money or something like that. And one of the things that really stuck with me, she said she gave a lot of tips because she was one of the person too who struggled with finances and with money. And she talked about like you putting money around your house like cash. So that way every time you see it, like you remind yourself, oh, um, every time you see the money, you're reminding yourself, oh, I'm in abundance. Like you just automatically do that because you're seeing money, you're like, I'm in abundance. So what I started doing is I'd put money around my house or I'll put it in my purse. So every time I open my purse, I will see that $5 bill, I'll see that $10 bill. And I'll be like, okay, I'm in abundance. Like it just clicks back over and over again. And then and I find that really has helped me because it doesn't do anything for you if you're telling yourself like, oh, I don't have money. Like I stopped saying all that stuff. Like even like watching your words, like how you speak of money, I see a lot of people will be like, oh, like I don't have money, like I'm broke. And it's like I don't even say that. I don't call myself broke. I say I'm in abundance. That's it. I even started reading this book here, Countdown to Riches. It's like a new book by Rhonda Byrne. And this book was a game changer because she does makes you do a lot of activities. I didn't actually completely finish it because it's a daily like book. And one of the exercises she makes you do is she makes you write out all the things that you want and then basically put a price to it and then add it up and then she makes you like write it down on a check. Um, and you don't really think to do that, but it's like it just opens your mind, like because you're seeing how much this thing is, and then you're putting it out there, and you're like, okay, God, this is gonna happen, type thing. I really like that because it just expands your mind. Like she talks about like a lot of times we just spend our times like saying like what we don't have, but what if you just spent your time as well saying what you want, and you're declaring it out there, and it's like this is what I want. Like you're not spending your time in lack, and that's something that I struggled a lot with is lack, right? Because of my humble beginnings of being homeless, right? That messes with your mind. So like doing stuff like that reminded me. And then she makes you do another thing where every time you spend money, what you do. So if you go to a store and let's say you buy gas for $60, you'd be like, oh, I received that $60. It's like I just received. So when you spend, you'd be like, I received that $60. And then I would even imagine like someone giving me that $60 and me putting in my bank account. However, that whatever works for you. So I find that helps for me when I'm spending money. Sometimes I get anxiety around it, and then I'll remind myself, no, I'm receiving money. I'm receiving that back. Every time I spend, I'm receiving that back because it reminds you, like, okay, the money is coming back. It's not like you're losing money. It's the idea of that, like, yeah, though you're spending it, it's coming back to you. Basically, you're receiving that money back. So that really expanded my mind. So that way you're not feeling like you're in lack. Like I know a lot of people feel like that, and I know like when you start spending money, it's like, oh my gosh, like I have to spend and I don't have this, but it makes you more excited. Even like another thing that one of the books that You're Badass was she talked about like when you're paying bills, you say, oh thank you that I even had the money. And so when I'm paying a bill, I'll be like, oh thank you I even have the money because there's times where I didn't have the money for bills, right? Like it just changes your mindset around it. Another thing I do is even like listening to podcasts around money. Like it's like, if you know you're weak in something, right? And you're struggling with something, sometimes you have to fight. You have to fight. Like you have to if you know you're struggling with money, or let's say you want to learn about business, right? You have to be consuming like a lot of information, a lot of stuff around the very thing that you want to be successful at. And learning about it. Because if you're like I find that all my life, if I wanted to succeed in something when it came to business, I'd always go to someone that had the expertise in it, right? Because then that builds your confidence when you're doing the task. So I applied the same thing when it came to money. And so I would then listen to podcasts about finances. I love one of them is Rich BFF by Vivian. And I really loved her because I love her story and I love how she brings on people. She talks about finance. She's so confident about it. Or there was like Friends Who Invest. I really love her. And I follow her on Instagram and I like listen to her podcast. And it's interesting to see, and then it allows you to be in people's world where they're just thriving, they're just succeeding when it comes to finances. And they say like, oh, look at your friends and you see who you are, right? But it's like, yes, they're not friends, but you're like getting into that world of seeing how people think and you're thinking bigger. So then it allows you to think the same way. Because sometimes if you're around people who constantly say, oh, I'm living paycheck to paycheck and all this stuff, and like if you're around friends like that all the time, it could like really drag you down. Right. And it's hard to keep like a very it's hard to keep a mindset where it's how do you say it? It's hard to be thinking bigger when other people, everyone's struggling around you, because then you have to fight through that. But it's like if you're around other people who are in abundance, who are doing really well, it makes you see, okay, there's another world right now. There's another side of this where other people are doing well. But yeah, let me know what you've been doing when it comes to finances. I'm very curious. Um, So I'm a big believer in that. Like I don't believe like you should just accept it. I understand like obviously like there's people who struggle, right? And you're gonna struggle, you're gonna have your ups and downs. But it's important not to accept it just because you're behind right now or you're page for the pet doesn't mean that you stop fighting. Right. To give you like an idea, like I used to be a part of mastermind where especially during the marketing agency days. And you'll be around people who are making like 50, 60, like $1,000 a month, and it kind of opens your mind because then you start thriving. Then you're like, oh, like I'm trying to make more money too, because you're only used to this world where you're seeing other people make that amount. But the thing about it, the other side of it is like you get to see like when you start looking at the outside world, you're like, okay, this is not the norm, right? People are used to making like way less than that, right? $3,000 a month. Hey, Kelsey, like people, how are you? People are used to making like in a paycheck, like obviously you can make a lot more, but on average people are at least used to making $3,000 4,000 a month, right, from work, right? Let's say $2,000 a paycheck, whatever. But like when you're around people who are making 50 60,000 dollars a month, it really expands your mind, right? And you'll notice your income, thank you, you'll notice your income increases as well, right? Because then you're around people, your territory starts to expand because you're around people who are making a lot more. So you think, okay, this is like the bar, right? But if you're around people who are always, that's why I try to be careful who I'm around. By the way, I'm a big believer in protecting my peace and mindset because it's so easy to like, we are sponges, okay? So if you're around a friend or Debbie Downer that's always complaining about bills, always complaining about money, man, it will take you down. Like people don't realize, like it will take you down. You'll think that that's all that there is. Like you think like, oh, like well, I guess we're meant to struggle. Like not meant to get out of this, and that's not true. Like you have to be so careful of the people that you're around. You have to really like be careful and pay attention to just because someone tells you their story doesn't make it your story. Like their story and what they believe is not your story. So usually if someone's like says any type of like broke mindset, poverty like driven thing, I'm very very protective of my mind because that's something that I struggled with, right? Of lack and like homelessness, like almost going homeless, not having any like money. Like that's something that I struggled with. I'm curious to know what you guys' journey has been when it comes to money. Do you guys read books around it? Do you do read any type like do you listen to any type of podcast like, or can you do you just wing it? Which is okay, no judgment here. But I just realized that you just have to sometimes fight. You have to fight. I remember there was one time I was in Mexico and I was in Mexico and I went at a very low point and I remember there was a time where I finally had enough and I found this video on YouTube by Joseph Murphy, and it was a game changer because he talks about, when your mind goes there, basically, when you start worrying about bills and, like you're like, okay, the money's not coming in, like you're in a very tight spot. He talked about you have to basically have tools to fight. In his case, it was reading the Bible verses around God providing and remind you that God provides, right? And saying, like God is like, he pays for everything. He owns 10,000 cattle, like stuff like that. And I remember I started doing that where I would read Acts, and it talked about how he provides and he protects you. And I started reading every day, and I would, walk around the block in my house. And it started opening my mind because I would look around and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is what God created, like all the houses. Like you're walking on the like sidewalk. Like there's someone that God put that desire in their heart to create. Like everything around you was created by someone. And like it just showed you, oh my God, like God is a rich daddy. Like that's how you started thinking. And I remember thinking like that really helped me very through hard times, and it really helped me actually because that was one of the ways where it helped me to keep going in my lowest points, where I was like, God, I don't have the money. I don't know why I'm still here. Like where it was so hard. And I remember that's when my mentor was like offered to like, help me in my business and like pay for like everything I was behind in. Because he saw my resilience and all that. I didn't see it like that. To me, I was like, man, I was just struggling. But he saw my perseverance. You just don't know who's watching. Like you don't know. You're all like, don't give up. Like don't give up because I like you're in a situation where you're like, oh my God, I can't see the end of the road. Like I can't see where my finances is going. Like don't give up because you can't see what's going on behind closed doors. You can't see that. You don't know what God is working up. You don't know like who's watching. Okay. And also you have to create your own opportunities. Like you may have to create your own opportunities. So maybe you're like, okay, I'm gonna make a ditch effort, even though I don't feel rich. I'm gonna read this book, right? Like maybe you're like, I'm gonna read this book. Or maybe you're like, I'm gonna listen to this podcast about finances. Or I'm gonna listen to this meditation about finances. Like you have to figure out, okay, what could get because you know what? It's hard to take action when you're in distress. It's hard to take action when you're stressed out and you're worried. You don't make the best decisions when you're in that situation, by the way. You make the best decision when you're calm. When you're like you feel optimistic. When you feel like, oh, like I can do this. I have an extra $5 in my account. And your mind is calm. Like some of my best ideas is when I'm calm. When I'm frantic and anxious, like I don't have no good ideas. I'm telling you that from now. Your best ideas is when you are calm, baby. Okay? And that's why you have to do all those things, whether that's reading a book, whatever helps you. Or you're reading a Bible verse reminding that God's a provider, like over and over. Like you can't just let those thoughts consume you. And it's just talking for someone who's done that. You cannot let those thoughts consume you. But I want to end it here. So I created this I created a Google form where I want people to just give their feedback on what they feel they need help with in terms of using your story and your past story to create something beautiful, an idea. Because a lot of times we allow our circumstances to hold her back, right? And so my goal is to bring all those ideas, your story, use your stories to create a beautiful offer that you want to create. So it's in the link description. You can read all about it in the link description. And it's like if you've been wanting to just start where you are and build out an offer, start a new idea. Like I am here for it. And I want to see you in there. I want to see your thoughts on like what you've been thinking about in terms of like an idea that you want to create. But yeah, see you until then.